Inside Huntsville with Brenda Martin, a conversation with department heads at City Hall on streets, ball fields, public safety, and more. And also with our community partners that add economic security, support education, and enhance the city's quality of life.
Hello, I'm Brenda Martin with Inside Huntsville. Thanks for joining me today. I'm on site on the campus of UAH in the Chan Auditorium, and today we are here to promote the Young Writers Contest. The purpose of the Young Writers Contest is to encourage, to promote, to stimulate, and to reward outstanding writing of the young people in Madison County. This is their 49th year, believe it or not, and we'll get a chance to talk with some of the board members and also the writers themselves. Come along with us.
Granny died before her encouragement turned into my career, but her...
Author Beck McDowell and keynote speaker encourage the students to listen to the world and to keep writing. The winners are from elementary school to high school. They represent poetry, short stories, and artwork. What is it that brings the talent out in these children?
Well, I guess it's their parents and their grandparents, and their teachers are wonderful. Mm-hmm. We just couldn't do it without the teachers.
How many entries did you receive?
We had 667 from Madison County.
Third place, Allie Reed Parker, second grade.
So that is a lot of interest from our community.
It is. And that's public and private and homeschool.
Jesse O'Brien, second grade, Holy Spirit Regional Catholic School.
We'd like to ask the first place winners to read their entries.
You can't find your keys? Don't blame me, please. That mysterious stain on the floor? Probably the dog. And do you know what more? I think he ate my homework too. I didn't see him, but it could be true. Someone lost the remote to your TV? Well, I have two brothers. Which could it be? My room is a mess. Where did my day go? Could have been a mini room wrecking tornado. Tossed all my books right off the shelves. Looks like the drawers were dumped by elves. Someone put gum in the baby's hair. I sure am glad I wasn't there. There are crown marks on the wall in the corner. Maybe it's artwork left by the last owners. You know, Mom, sounds like you're having a really strange day. I thought hard about it, and all I can say is it wasn't me.
Second place, Elisa St. Julian, first grade, Harvest.
And you wrote The Brave Princess, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
What I started with, we didn't know it had to be a poem, so we wrote it, and then we read it again, and it said a poem, and so we started with that, and then we changed it to a poem, and we got words, and we found the words that rhymed with it to make it sense.
We can start with the first place winner in the lower elementary poetry division, Helen Hollinger.
Your poem was Stormy Days. Tell us about that.
I hate stormy days, so that's why there was hide on the covers, don't fret. That's like my mom saying, don't worry.
Don't worry. I love it.
Drip, drop, hear the raindrops. Look outside as the raindrops drip on the tree leaves. Drip, drip, drop. Watch, listen to the lightning crash. Rain is getting harder. Drip, drip, drip. Hear the thunder. Boom, the rain is getting harder. Drip, 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 drip. Listen, drippity, 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 drip. Pat, 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 pat. Rain, 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 rain. Crash, boom, pat, pat, pat. Drippity, 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 drop. Crash, crash, crash. Boom, boom, boom. Pat, pat, pat. Crash, boom, drippity, drippity, drip. Storms, storms, hear it rumble, hide in the covers. Don't fret. Drip, drip, drop. Crash, pat, pat, pat. Crash, boom, stormy, stormy weather. Pat, crash, drip, drop, hear the storm brew. Crash, boom, drip, pat, crash, boom, boom, boom. Pat, 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 my window is shaking. Crash, boom, crash. Rain, rain, rain. Crash, boom, drip, drop, drip. Crash, crash. Boom, drippity, drippity, drip. Rain, rain, rainy day. Rain is fun. I love rainy days. I love the rain. The rain stopped. Hooray! Now a beautiful rainbow above the clouds.
was a pretty long poem for you.
It took me one day.
Oh my goodness. So how often do you write, Hallie?
My teacher, Miss Holland, she lets us do journal, and she always wants us to do free write in our journal, so I write very often.
The steady lapping of the waves against the side of our landing boat filled the air. The wild waves of the English Channel tossed us around, like a toy boat in the middle of a pond. "Private Henry," a voice shouted behind me. I glanced up and saw Lieutenant Williams beckoning me towards him. I climbed the ladder to the small, cramped bridge and stared through the rain-soaked glass. Ahead of me was Normandy, and the beach along which the Allied powers would storm with all their force. A young, slim man, the lieutenant always had a scowl on his face and was known among the men to be fearsome. We just received a radio message from London. The men from our battalion will be landing farther east to seize the town of Vire. Let the other soldiers know our orders have changed. "As you say, sir," I responded. I vaulted back down the ladder and took in a sickening scene. All around me, men my age were praying, vomiting, or just staring numbly into the gray sky. We all knew that the Germans had reinforced the beach and that anyone could die at any moment in the operation. I quickly spread the word about our new order, not a minute before the dread shout came from the bridge. 3 minutes till landing, lads." I pulled my rifle off my back and gripped it tightly. All around me, boys, for they were too young to be men, fastened on their helmets and secured their packs. 1 minute. Suddenly an explosion rocked our boat, sending waves crashing onto us. I craned my neck over the side of the boat and saw, not 50 feet away, another landing boat aflame. It had hit a mine, and the explosion had sent the front half of the craft careening into the sky. I lowered my head in horror and prepared for the landing. I was all the way in the back of the boat, packed in with 40 sweating men, so when the front part of the ship opened, all I could hear was the gears grinding. We had landed. Immediately, bullets pounded into us, slaying at least 6 men. As much as I hated myself for it, the only thing I could think was, "Let it be them, let it be them. Please God, just not me." The rest of us charged out and onto the beach. A mortar sent plumes of water flying into the air. I tumbled out into the shallow water. A bullet hit the man in the leg directly next to me, and he toppled into the frothy waves. He struggled to stay afloat, but his heavy gear, his helmet, and the very things that were supposed to protect him dragged him to the bottom where he drowned. Ahead of me a granite pillbox loomed, machine gun fire chattering from its slits. I vaulted over a stone wall and dove into a shallow ditch. The remaining men from our battalion collapsed next to me, their faces pale and sickly. "The sooner we eliminate that MG, the sooner we can seize the beach," the lieutenant shouted. Everyone nodded. There was no point in talking. The gunfire and explosions were the only thing you could hear. "On 3, we're moving up. Get to the base of that pillbox and out of their line of fire," he hollered. He slowly counted down on his fingers. We all hopped up and charged across the sand. Bullets felled 3 men by the time we got there, and another man had disappeared in an explosion as another mortar barrage rained down on us. We only had 18 men left in our unit, not counting the men who had hunkered down in the ditch and provided us with covering fire. The lieutenant nodded at me, and I pulled a grenade from my belt and yanked the ring off it. I tossed it up over me, and the small object disappeared into the granite structure. Almost immediately, a wave of heat washed over me, and orange flames spat out of the openings. Screams erupted from within, but they quickly died away. I had single-handedly eliminated a huge threat with an object smaller than my foot. We moved up to the ridge that the pillbox had been constructed on, and off the beach. All around me, Allied forces were charging up the beach and were moving farther inland. We had overwhelmed the German front line, and already transport ships were moving in with more troops and ammunition. Hostile soldiers fled from the huge force opposing them or surrendered to the Allies. The trenches on the other side of the ridge were empty, abandoned. Every weapon, knife, and bullet had been packed up and brought back with the retreat. The men around me, despite having lost so many friends, had grins on their faces. They had survived an assault on a heavily guarded beach and would be heroes for the rest of the century and into the next. They had fought and won for a cause that would be remembered forever. I looked out from the ridge and saw a scene of horror, but one that filled me with pride. The frothy waves were scarlet, and bodies littered the beach, draped over barbed wire or just floating in the water. In the distance, billowing clouds of smoke rose into the air from the massive Allied fleet floating in the channel. All around me was canvas, the stars and stripes of the United States and the billowing ensign of England. I numbly looked out over the beach and turned my back on the carnage. The battalion was starting forward again, this time moving toward the looming buildings of the nearest town. It took 30 minutes to trek across the bomb-riddled land. We entered the village down the main street. Houses had collapsed over the cobblestone road, and shops, their insides burned out by dead fires, were everywhere. Ahead of us, a lone soldier walked. His helmet had come off, and his packing clothes were ripped in many places, although he still had his rifle in his hands. As we edged closer, we started shouting wildly, startling the man. He twisted around, and when seeing he was outnumbered, dropped his rifle in the dirt. He began to speak wildly in German, gesturing at himself and in the distance. "Put him down," the lieutenant whispered hoarsely to a nearby private. "Sir, he's surrendering. We can't kill him in cold blood. It'd be murder," I protested. "And what do you suppose we do with him, Private? A stray German caught up in an Allied invasion? He doesn't even speak our language," he said harshly, rounding on me. He turned his back on me and nodded to the other man. "Do it." He raised his rifle to his eye and shoved the stock into his shoulder. A look of sheer horror overcame the young man across from me before the bullet tore into his chest. He was dead before he hit the ground. I turned away and vomited. I couldn't help it. I had seen enough bloodshed and killing to last me a lifetime, and this last act of murder was all I could take. "Get up, Henry," Lieutenant Williams said, his voice softer. He grasped my arm and hauled me to my feet. "We still have a war to fight." But he was wrong. That was tomorrow. Around me, the Allied forces seized more and more towns, villages, and cities. A sudden, deep droning drowned out any noise. I stared up at the sky to see friendly bombers and planes everywhere. Overhead, a huge B-17 swooped by, escorted by several small fighters. Around me, the men were relaxing again, shaking out their muscles and stretching. I slipped away from the group and walked into a burned room. A staircase stretched up before me, and I took it, wandering farther up. I eventually came out onto a balcony that was placed high above any other building in the village. It was then I realized the rain had stopped. The bright noon sun peeked out behind a white cloud. I unbuckled my helmet and dropped it at my feet. Planes filled the blue sky, and everywhere, jeeps, trucks, and soldiers trekked across the war zone. D-Day was over, but the Allies' bloody trek across Europe had begun. I slipped my rifle over my back and made my way back down. I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had made it through the bloodiest day of my life, perhaps a century, and lived to tell the tale.
And so what do you plan on doing with your skills? Because you're quite good at what you do.
Thank you. Well, I want to be a veterinarian when I get older. So if I do write when I get older, I'm probably going to write about dogs and cats and animals like that and write informational books or things like that for young people who are learning about dogs and animals and trying to decide what pet they want.
Cosmos. We've created galaxies in city blocks. Neon signs go supernova on every corner. Storefronts orbit street lamp suns. Automobiles populate the asteroid belts, and we reap the benefits of this beauty. We live in a world that sparkles and breathes with life, with cityscapes that rival even the cosmos. We have built structures that scrape the heavens, and we have made ourselves tall. With such greatness at eye level, looking up has become obsolete, though this fact seems to no longer bother us. All this celestial beauty, and the only price we had to pay was the stars in the sky.
Third place, Sydney Edwards, senior, Bob Jones High School.
You are what I call a triple winner, huh? In this Young Writers contest. How does it make you feel?
Well, one, extremely honored that my pieces were picked, and really happy and proud of myself a little bit for being able to do it.
The art contest had so many wonderful entries, it was difficult to choose. The first place winner is Sydney Edwards.
Your artwork is on the front cover.
Yes, it is.
That's got to be just really thrilling to you.
It really is.
Tell us about, what does that mean?
Well, I actually drew this piece back in Halloween, and we were just doing just different like scary things for our film and animation club at school. Well, I got second place in senior short story, and it's called In the Valley of Beautiful Monsters. And it's basically just about how teenagers just don't feel like they fit in sometimes, and they just need an escape, and just like people that they do feel comfortable around.
I've been writing basically since I could hold a pencil. My mom would tell you the same thing. I've been writing stories since I was tiny.
Okay.
And I actually am going to continue writing. One of my majors in college, I'm a senior right now, is going to be creative writing with an English minor, so.
Shannon Rainey is the first place winner in the senior short story contest.
Tell us about your short story. It was quite interesting.
So my story was a retelling of a Greek myth. It was basically a retelling of the origin of the god Pan's, his pan flutes, as we call them. It was actually formed from the transformation of a nymph into river reeds that he then cut down and bound together. So I told the story from her perspective, which is one you very rarely hear. There is a man who loves me. I am his. I belong to him. He does not belong to me. We spend every day together. I am always with him. He carries me close to him. I live in his pocket. He and I make sweet music together. I sing for him. I play my heart out to him. I was his instrument. But I was not always his instrument. I used to be a woman, a beautiful woman, a free woman, a living woman. More than that, I was a nymph. I lived in Arcadia. I remember my life there. I miss it. I used to run through the forest, my feet as swift as the wind, and my heart as light as a bird. The air chilled my skin, and Artemis's silver light illuminated my path. I followed upon her heels and her words. We would begin our hunt when the sun set each night and end when dawn's rosy fingers peeked over the horizon. I was thrilled by the chase, until I was being chased. I remember the day that he saw me, the man who loves me, Pan, the satyr, the trickster. I wandered back to my home from the nightly ritual, meandering among the flowers and trees and animals. The grass was soft under my bare feet, the sun warm on my skin. Day was comforting, but night was when I came alive. He was lurking in among the brush. I didn't see him until it was too late. I caught his eye. His gaze was lustful, predatory. He looked at me like I was a lion, or he was a lion and I a doe. I froze in fear. At first I wondered if I was to be his next meal. Then he smiled. His thin lips twisted upward into a lewd grin. That was when I saw his teeth. His teeth were not those of a predator. I became confused, wondering why he should look at me so. They were not sharp, vicious fangs. He did not snarl like a wolf, nor a bear, nor a lion. He was not a flesh eater. His teeth, his mouth, it was that of a man. Then I understood. He did not look at me as a lion looks upon its next prey. He looked at me as a man looks upon his next conquest. A fire lit under my feet, and I broke into a sprint, him in close pursuit. I flew across the forest floor, praying to every god and goddess that he would not catch me. Then a river sliced across my path. I thought I was done for. I sent up a panicked prayer. The water nymphs, my dear sisters, heard my call. They felt my fear. Come, sister, they said. Join us. Quickly now, sister. Trust us. We will hide you. You will be safe. Come, Syrinx. With a glance over my shoulder, I stepped into the river, the cold water wrapping its icy fingers around my legs, grasping at my skin. I felt as though my feet were being pulled into the sand, rooting me there. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was no longer myself. My sisters had transformed me. I was a river reed. I cowered there among the plants with bated breath. I shuddered at his footsteps. His hoof steps crunched on the leaves. He was more than a man, or less. He was an animal and a man. His human skin faded into fur, his torso twisted down into hooved legs. He was even more horrid of a creature than I had imagined. I shivered in fear of his gaze, hoping, praying he would not notice me. He did not. It was worse. He collapsed to his goat-like knees, pounding his fearsome fists against the soil. Then he let out a noise unlike any I have ever heard. Part scream, part howl, part sigh of anguish and frustration. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It made me feel colder than the frigid river. If I had been human, it would have chilled me to my bones and made my blood run cold. The force of his cry echoed, whistled, sighed, across the tops of the hollow reeds where I was hidden. He looked up again. Those strange, cold eyes fell on me once more. I do not believe he recognized me. It didn't matter then, not now. His lips curled into a different grin, less lustful, more mischievous. His hands closed around me. He pulled out a knife. I was frozen helpless as the blade sliced through what was once my body, what was once my living, breathing, beautiful body. I longed to run away, to defend myself, to cry out in pain. I could do nothing. He gathered me up with the river reeds and bound us together. He licked his lips, then he picked us up and placed his mouth against us, and he blew. He was disgusting and vile and cruel. I wanted to run, to cry, to scream, even to die. I could do nothing, nothing but sing. I can do nothing. I am his. I belong to him. He does not belong to me. We spend every day together. I am always with him. He carries me close to him. I live in his pocket. He says he loves me. I do not love him. I will never love him, but I will spend forever with him.
As a writer and editor, I love seeing these young people who are so excited about telling stories, because we really are all made of stories. And think about how much we learn from hearing the stories of other people who are like us and who are different from us. We can, understand a little bit of their lives when we hear these wonderful stories. So to see young people who are excited about the power of the written word, telling these stories, their own stories, it just makes us stronger as a community.
Thousands of students have participated in this contest. We want to thank the teachers, the parents, and the school administrators for their continual support. This program celebrates the gift of writing, and as one of the winners said, and it's fun. That's my show for today. I'm Brenda Martin for Inside Huntsville. Thanks for joining me, and enjoy your day.